Hi, I'm Bret, the creator of the Michael Brecker podcast. This is the 30th chapter. Michael's music really speaks for itself. What I've done in the series is pair it with interviews that I've done or I've found to tell the story of Michael Brecker, the man. The impetus for this podcast, the catalyst, was my friend Bill Milkowski, who wrote a book about Michael that everyone should read, whether you know Michael Brecker or not, because it tells the story from the perspective of many people through Bill's writing. A lot of people, I gotta fix this, probably remember the great book that Bill did with Jocko, about Jocko. Bill is not only a writer, but someone who is deeply into the music, and he's part of the scene. He hangs out, he knows the people. He knew Michael, he knew Jocko. When you write a book about someone and you actually know them, that adds a different dimension to it. And certainly knowing Michael, working on a project with him, spending quality time with him, gave me a way to do the podcast that might be different from somebody who didn't know Michael. The project we did together, along with Joe Lovano and Dave Liebman, was the live webcast of the Saxophone Summit in December of 1999 from Birdland, one of the first live webcasts, video webcasts. Way back when, in the early days of the internet, when there was very little broadband and you didn't see much video. Now, it's a different world, for better or worse. You may be picking up some wind here. I am outside. I hope that's not intolerable. It comes and it goes. I am now the jazz video guy. World headquarters are now in Guanajuato, Mexico. So Bill Milkowski, who wrote Ode to a Tenor Titan, and I sat down via Zoom almost a year ago when his book first came out, because I wanted to put some video up of Bill talking about the book. We did that, and I looked at the video. We talked for about 2 hours. I mean, I looked at it and I said, this would be a great podcast. Phew. And then I just did it. And I had some help from Louis Garretts, who does the Michael Brecker page on Facebook. Of course, anyone who knew Michael, who I contacted, was very interested in participating. I didn't get that many interviews. What I did is sometimes, in terms of posting the interviews on the podcast, I split them up into segments, into shorter chunks. I found that video on the web is best when it's in smaller pieces. I remember the first time I heard Michael, I guess it was 77, I believe, maybe 78. I've always been a big fan of Horace Silver, and when he released In Pursuit of the 27th Man, Randy Brecker and Michael Brecker played on some of those tracks. I knew Randy's music from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. In fact, I'm trying to think of the timing of this, because I met Randy first in the studio. My friend Walter Bishop Jr. recorded an album for Muse Records called Soul Village. That was my first liner note gig. And Randy was a trumpet player on that. And of course, I knew his music from Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and had a chance to talk to him in the studio. But I really didn't know Michael or his music. I'd heard of the Brecker brothers. I mean, I'd heard them, but not really listened to them. And then Horace Silver comes out with Gregory Is Here. That was one of those times when you hear something and everything stops. Who was that? Michael's playing on that was head-turning. And a lot of people have share my enthusiasm about that particular solo. I mean, there's a lot of Michael Brecker solos, as we've heard in the podcast series. You know, what the podcast series has been is I've taken selections from Michael's video discography and paired them with interviews. So I'm working on a number of projects at once. I don't always remember what the pairing was, and I'm too lazy to go back and look. But a couple of weeks ago, I put up Michael's solo from Thieves in the Night, the Prince composition played by Herbie Hancock's New Standards Band back at the 1977 Montreal Jazz Festival. Just an incredible solo. I mean, it's kind of like Jazz Improv 101. Let's listen to and watch that, and let's see how he develops his solo. And of course, there's a group interplay that made the experience very special. And I just took the solo and put it here in the podcast. But last week on my channel, Jazz Video Guy, I put up the entire song, which is about 21 minutes long. And Michael, John Schofield, and Herbie Hancock soloed on it. Just a total tour de force. There were so many instances I've experienced of being knocked out by Michael's playing. But I was lucky enough, as I mentioned, to work on a project with him and get to know Michael Brecker, the man, the person. And he was a remarkable guy. He was a humanitarian, compassionate man, very smart, always working to get to the next place. I once said to him, "Why do you practice so much?" "Because you already have the technical mastery." He said, "Because I want to be there when it happens." So, yeah. I've got a couple of episodes in the can here, so to speak, with Judd Miller, who's a synthesizer guy who did some work with Michael. And also, he is a video documentarian as well. When Michael and Charlie Hayden went into the studio, I guess in 1999, and did American Dream, Judd was there in the studio, and he took some video of the session. So I've got probably 2 or 3 episodes of the podcast coming up with Judd, where he talks about Michael, and also we see some of this documentation of a recording session, which I think you'll find really interesting. Beyond that, I'm not sure what future episodes of the podcast are going to be, but I am working on some other projects right now, including a Miles Davis podcast that started yesterday, actually, when this airs. One of my favorite Miles groups was his 1970 band with Gary Bartz and Keith Jarrett, Jack DeJohnette, Michael Henderson, sometimes Entombed, Don Elias, for a European tour, which video we'll be watching in Dougal, Leon Chancellor. So Gary Bartz and I have been friends for a long time, and we did an interview recently where he talked about working with Miles, that particular band. And he said things that I think you'll find enlightening. So that series began yesterday. That's going to be every Thursday, probably for the next 7 or 8 weeks, where I'll take some of Gary's interview and pair it with a track from that tour. That particular band toured Europe in the fall and early winter of 1970. Brings me back to the experience I had with Michael in 1999, where we did the event from Birdland. Unfortunately, not many people got to see it back then because it was really hard. Very few people had broadband. It was very hard to see video. We were streaming it live. But it was a special night because that band, 3 excellent rhythm section. I mean, Phil Markowitz, Rufus Reed, and Billy Hart, a very fiery, dynamic drummer. But putting those 3 saxophones together, Michael, Joe Lovano, and Dave Liebman, sometimes a promoter or producer or someone will book a recording or a gig where they put 2 or 3 musicians together. It's like Battle of the Saxes or something like that. And in this case, it really wasn't. because Michael, Joe, and Lieb had such respect and love for each other that it wasn't about seeing who could play the best. It was about inspiring each other by playing at a very high level. They didn't really talk about what they were going to do before the gig. They took some common songs from the repertoire, like John Coltrane's Locomotion, Round Midnight, these chestnuts, and they played. And it was really something being there, and I feel lucky that it came together to actually document it. At the time, I was producing videos and content for a site called the Global Music Network, whose mission was to document jazz and classical music. We went to concerts and clubs and all over the world, sometimes audio, sometimes video. Thanks for your really positive feedback. It's kind of hard to find old content on Facebook unless you know what you're looking for. So the early episodes of the podcast, you're really going to have to go through the timeline of Lewis's group or your own timeline if you shared it or something, which scrolling through that 30 weeks of stuff is difficult. So to go back and look at the series, I would suggest going on YouTube. I have a playlist down there called the Michael Brecker Podcast, which you can access by themichaelbreckerpodcast.com. So you can go back and check out other episodes of the podcast and share it with your friends. I hope they'll enjoy it as much as we do. I hope everyone stays healthy and sane in these difficult times. This music certainly has inspired me. Men like Michael Brecker, working with Michael, knowing him, listening to him, helps to inspire me, to keep me going against all the obstacles we face, the unpredictability, the uncertainty of the future. I'm living outside the United States at this moment, and henceforth certainly gives me a good perspective on what's happened in the United States. I don't want to get into that except to say I'm very concerned. So stay healthy and keep swinging.